So good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Teaching Kitchen. My name is Emily, and we're here at NewYork-Presbyterian Hudson Valley Hospital. So glad that you've all joined us tonight for our Rustic Sicilian feast. And thank you, as always, to Alita for moderating our program this evening. So first and foremost, if this is your first time at our Teaching Kitchen, welcome. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. Alita, I'm sure we'll get that started in just a moment if she hasn't already. And you can put your questions there. Alita will read them to me. I really want to make sure that you can leave here feeling like, oh, okay, I know how to make all these recipes, and start to integrate them into your life, because we all get a little tired of the same old thing over and over again. So I'm really here to show you some simple recipes that are nutritious and something a little bit different. And since we can't travel to Sicily today, we're going to, well, I think we could technically, but we're going to sort of virtually travel to Sicily using our kitchen as our airplane, I guess. So if you'd like to join me on this culinary voyage, I'm going to get started. Alita, just want to make sure everything is ready for takeoff.
Yes, everything is ready. The chat box is ready.
Okay, perfect.
And there's a lot of people. There are a lot of people here today.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, so a lot of fans of Sicily, I guess. So I have not been to Sicily, but I've had the pleasure of being welcomed into an Italian family. And while they're from Tuscany, there's a lot of sort of crossover between cuisines. So my mother-in-law makes some of these dishes herself, and I've learned them from her, and they're really good and they're very simple. So I'm excited to share some of them with you this evening. So a little bit about the flavors of Sicily, some things that kind of pop into your mind when you think about Sicily. What do you all think about? If you want to put in the chat box one food or one word or something that kind of, that way we can get the conversation going and I get to hear from all of you. And as those are coming in, I'm going to introduce you to the three dishes that we're making today. The first is a sweet and sour roasted pumpkin. The second is our lentils and pasta soup. It's definitely soup season, so I'm excited to share this. And the third is a pesto made using pistachios instead of the traditional pine nut pesto. There's some pine nuts in this, but definitely not pine nut based. It's way more pistachio based, and pistachios have a very special place in Sicilian cuisine. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you as well. Alita, do you want to share any of the chat coming in? Anybody had anything that sort of surprised you or that you thought was interesting to share with the group?
So Patricia says, got to say this, that she's looking forward to a time where she can be in the kitchen with you again. It's been too long, so I figured that would be one. Donata says lemons. You had asked the question. Her response was lemon.
So citrus, exactly. Citrus
lemons for Josephine again. Square pizza.
Yep. Square, so like the Sicilian style. Yeah. I actually don't know if that's Sicilian or if that's actually Sicilian American. I'm not sure about that, but I certainly enjoy it. So wherever it's from, wherever it's from, ends up in my stomach, I don't care.
It's delicious. Barbara says rustic is the word she thinks of, and John Fergala says Sicilian fig cookies.
Oh wow,
that sounds so good.
Sounds
Lisa
delicious.
says peppers. And Donata says, I'm not sure if this is an Italian word, but it's Cucidatil. Cucidati.
Guidato. I don't think I know that one. Interesting. Something to research. Yeah.
And Denise says, a loud family gathering around a table loaded with food.
Yeah, definitely. Sicilian families and all Italian families there's a beautiful food culture. They love to eat, and it's a really beautiful thing. Yeah. Anything else?
Donata says that those are fig cookies. It's pronounced cocidati.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that must be the cookies that John is talking about. Thank you, Donata. Thank you, John.
And Gail says stubborn men.
That's not on our menu tonight, Gail.
And that's it. Thank you. That was good response.
Too much fun. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for participating. So, definitely some things that I think about are lemon and some of the things that you all mentioned. I also think about lentils and chickpeas. And it's really interesting. Sicily it's got all of these different influences, right? So you have the Greeks that brought things like olives and grapes and fava beans and basil and oregano and mint and a little bit. And then you've got Romans that brought bread and breadcrumbs. I thought the Romans would have brought more than that, but that's what they brought. And then you get to the Arab culture, which brings a huge amount of different things: chickpeas, couscous, citrus, rice, eggplant, nuts, pomegranate, saffron, what else? Cloves, cinnamon, pastas, all of those wonderful things that we really think of as Sicilian. And then the Spanish bring things like tomatoes and peppers and cocoa powder, which was coming over from the New World at that point. And the French, we brought pastries and cakes because that's what we do. So that's sort of like a brief culinary history. It's really interesting place to think about from a culinary standpoint because there's so many different great influences that come together in this one beautiful place. So we're going to get started with that lentil dish, so the lentils and pasta. So I have my water warmed up here, and we're going to just start by putting the lentils in. I put things just out of reach. I just gave them a little rinse and a soak. You don't have to soak your lentils, but if you do, it's going to speed up the cooking time. It's also going to help disinhibit the phytic acid, which is a naturally occurring substance on the lentil. So you want to, if you can soak them, great. If not, it's fine. What does it mean? If you disinhibit the phytic acid, it means that your body can latch on to some more of the more nuanced like vitamins and minerals in the lentils. You're still going to get all the fiber, all the protein, all the kind of macronutrients, but the phytic acid sometimes inhibits the digestion of some of the micronutrients. So a good way to kind of rinse all that off is just to literally rinse all that off. So that's what I'm doing with the lentils here. The lentils that I'm using today, even though this is a Sicilian class, I'm using these French green lentils. So this is what the package looks like. So French green lentils, give them a good rinse. If you have time to soak them, great. If not, toss them in the pot and don't worry about it because you're still going to get lots of fiber and all that good stuff too. So that's going to take about 20 minutes to cook. While that's cooking, let's get our pumpkin in the oven. So I actually have a kabocha squash from the garden. We're going to pretend it's a pumpkin because it looks like a pumpkin, doesn't it? It's just green instead of orange. And I do want to show you how to work with this. So I cracked it open, but I'm going to show you exactly what I did. So put the knife in, and then I bang it on the counter, and this is going to be loud because I'm demonstrating. Keep banging it until the knife goes through. So eventually, it's very hard to crack open these gourds. But if you kind of get a wedge in there and you just bang it, bang it, bang it, eventually you can kind of crack, create a little wedge and use your knife to create some leverage and crack it open. So let me show you, maybe I can try to demonstrate. I'm going to trim off the top. I'm not going to use the stem. So we'll pretend this is whole. So you would kind of, and you want to keep your other hand out of the way. So pop it in there a little bit and then keep your hand on top and the other hand, I'm going to turn this here so you can all see. And you keep kind of thudding it against the board and eventually you'll get it cracked open. So this way both hands are out of the way. You're just using gravity and the pressure of your knife to crack it open. So you don't have to worry about, the thing that I'm always worried about when cutting something that's really hard and that's round too and moving around, is that it'll roll and the knife will slip. So that's what I'm going for. Both hands safely out of the way. All right, questions or comments about that while I scrape out the seeds here?
So yeah, there was a question about how long to soak the lentils.
Yeah, so if they're red lentils, 20 minutes, but the lentils that we're using today, 40 minutes.
All right.
At least 40 minutes, but you could soak them longer if you wanted to.
And then there was
up to overnight, I would say. Up to, overnight.
A question from Barry about, is this going to work well? Will this method work the same with butternut squash?
Yes, it works well with butternut squash too. Hi, Barry. Thank you. All right, so I got some of these in the oven. I got them started. I'm going to show you what I did though, so you won't miss out a single step. I just want to flip them over because it's been about half the cooking time. So after about half the cooking time, see it's nicely browned. Flip it over. And don't worry, I'm going to show you the step that happened in between here. So again, with kabocha squash, you technically don't have to peel it, which is kind of a nice feature, I think, because you get to eat the skin. With some other pumpkins, you do have to peel them. So I did include instructions for that as well. These are looking a little dry. So I'm just going to add a little more olive oil to them and I'll let them keep going for about 10, 20 more minutes. You want to cook them until they're tender all the way through. So how did I get to that step? Here we are. We've got our little pumpkin squash halves, whichever you're using. And again, you're going to want to put it on a flat surface. It's a little bit easier. So here we go. So we have a flat surface. Keep your hand on top and push through. Right? So it's a little bit easier. Both hands are on top. If you're finding you're having a hard time, let's say you can't push through, it's just too hard. Again, use the same technique. Just like a hammer, right? So here we are, hand on top, 1, 2, through. 1, 2, through. So this way, I'm not even pushing. I'm just getting the knife started, 1, 2, and you're through. All right, so it's much less labor intensive, especially if you struggle with any arthritis or anything, and you want to be making these beautiful pumpkin and squash recipes. Now that it's October, it's definitely the time for that. So you want to be able to enjoy them. So this hopefully will help you get there. All right, so I'm going to lay these on my sheet pan. I have a little bit of parchment down here, not a little bit. I have a piece of parchment paper down. That's just to help me clean it up later. I did a squiggle of oil on the bottom. I'm going to do a little squiggle of oil on the top. And this is where the sweet and sour part comes in, right? So you get some honey or a little sprinkle of sugar, whichever you prefer. Some people don't like to heat honey because it does kind of denature the any of the good properties that the honey has. They don't like heat. So if you prefer not to, it's not going to harm you if you heat it, but certainly some people don't like to heat honey, so you can use sugar instead. Just a little sprinkle, like the same way I'm sprinkling salt. You don't really need a lot. So there you go. This is ready to go in. So that's the sweet part, and then you'll see the sour part will be a little bit later. Any questions about that?
Yeah, Barbara says that she read somewhere that leaving seeds in while roasting gives more flavor to the squash.
Moisture. Yeah. So Barbara, that's a really good good tip, and thank you for sharing it. So I like to do that with actually do that with Delicata Squash. I have one over here. Let me grab it so you can all have a visual and see what I'm talking about. So this is sometimes you'll see these crop up this time of year. This is called a Delicata Squash. And the way that I prepare this, Barbara, is exactly like you said. I cut very, very thin pieces. I leave the seeds in, and then I put it like a little coins on the sheet pan, roast it the same way. And the seeds actually get kind of cooked and they're crunchy. And you put a little sprinkle of salt and olive oil on them. And it's really good. So I definitely do that with the Delicata Squash. For the kabocha squash, I haven't tried that, so I'll take your word for it. But it's a cool technique to kind of play around with. And look, worst case scenario, if you wanted to try it out, you can always scrape the seeds out later. So whichever is easier for you. Thank you.
Barbara also says that she kind of cheats. She puts the squash into the microwave for a few minutes.
Yeah.
To be able to cut it easier.
A little bit softer.
She just puts a few holes to let out the steam.
I was just going to say, Barbara, I hope you're poking your squash, because otherwise you're going to have exploded squash in your kitchen. That's a really great tip as well. So if you wanted to poke a few holes in your squash, put it in the microwave for a few minutes. It does make it a little bit softer and easier to cut through as well. Either or, yeah.
And then the other Barbara Mahoney, wants to know what kind of oil are you using?
Okay, thank you. So I'm using an olive oil. This is, you can see it has this kind of nice greenish color. And I think I wrote in the recipe what oil to use. Did I? Yes, I did. Okay, yeah. So I'm using olive oil. It's a good question though. There are different kinds of olive oil. There's extra olive oil, virgin olive oil, and all the rest. This olive oil is sort of a regular olive oil because I'm cooking with it and it's going to 400 degrees. So anything that I cook that goes above 375, I will use not the extra virgin olive oil, just olive oil. So, okay, do we want to have the olive oil conversation now? I think we do. So olive oil, first of all, it's a huge part of Sicilian cuisine, and the nutrition of olive oil is it's very nutrient dense. It's one of the best oils for us, especially in terms of heart health, and that's because of the monounsaturated fats that are in that oil. So that the main fatty acid in olive oil is oleic acid, which may have these anti-inflammatory effects. Olive oil also contains vitamins E and vitamins K, so great heart healthy vitamins. There are some interesting studies correlating the use of olive oil with reducing the risk of stroke and heart disease and lowering blood pressure. So it's really interesting that food can have such a powerful effect on our heart health, and some even beneficial effects on blood sugar moderation, which makes sense, right? Because it's a fat which helps to stabilize blood sugar. So how is olive oil made? Technically, olive oil is a fruit juice, right? The olive is a fruit, it's pressed, and it's a fruit juice. So the most prized olive oils are sold unrefined and shortly after harvest. So basically as fresh as possible. It's like if you were to press an orange juice and hand it over, right? So it's as fresh as possible. The pulp that surrounds the central seed, that can be as much as 30% oil. So there's a lot of oil in that pulp around the seed. Usually the fruit takes about 6 to 8 months to come to ripeness, and then it's crushed. So you harvest it, it's crushed with the pit and everything. It's ground into this paste and it's kind of broken. You break up all these little fruit cells, and then that paste is pressed for about 20 to 40 minutes. That'll give the oil droplets sort of a chance to separate from that watery mass. That process is called malaxation. I never know if I'm saying that correctly, but that's what I think it's called. And then that paste is then pressed further to squeeze liquid from the solid. So that's sort of the process. It's just this pressing and squeezing and grinding. When you press it repeatedly, the more you press it, the less quality oil you get from it. So that's why often you'll see like first cold pressed on a bottle. That means it was the first pressing and there was no heat added. Now, sometimes heat helps to kind of draw out the oils. So the more pressing and heat that's added, the less quality your oil is. But sometimes these lower quality oils are actually better for cooking with at higher temperatures. And this is where it gets a little confusing. You're like, well, I only, I'd like to try to get the best quality oil if I can. So why would I cook with something that's less quality? Well, that's because olive oil can change depending on the amount of heat that's given to it. So if you're cooking something with an extra virgin olive oil that's first cold pressed and you think this is the best quality oil, but you're cooking it over 400 degrees, that oil is actually going to start to break down and it won't be as good for you. So that's why I tend to use sort of the cheaper versions of olive oil, the ones that are a little bit more, not the first cold pressed ones. I use those for cooking. Does that make sense to everybody? That was a long olive oil explanation. Thank you for hanging in there with me. Any questions about that?
So yeah, that's a question from E. So if you eat olives, will you get similar health benefits as olive oil plus the fiber too?
Yeah, absolutely. So olives, they have 30%, like I said, in the flesh. So olives do have some great health properties in there for you. I will say though, a lot of olives, once they're cured, they contain a lot of salt as well. So try to find the ones that aren't as salty. There's a kind of olive that's green. I think it's called Castelvetrano. And that I think is from Sicily. And that one's not very salty. It doesn't have as much sodium as the other ones. And I just want to kind of take apart the word quality. What makes good quality versus a lesser quality? The flavor and the content of the free fatty acids. So extra virgin olive oil must contain less than 0.8 free fatty acids, whereas a regular virgin olive oil has to have less than 2%. So the amount of free fatty acids that are in the oil is what kind of determines the quality. Any other questions?
So yes, actually Castelvetrano olives are my all-time favorite, by the way. I love them. I put them on everything.
Okay.
So Emma says that she recently fell in love with Paisano unfiltered olive oil. I guess that's the brand, Paisano.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I know that one. I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying it, Emma. That's great.
So one of the barbers has a question. She says,
okay,
she's not sure when she's sauteing on the stove, what temp is it on? Medium heat?
Yeah.
She's using olive oil?
Yeah, that's a really good question, right? Because if you're standing there and you're sauteing something, you don't exactly know the temperature of your flame, right? So how can you tell? Usually, if you've got oil in a pan and it starts to smoke on its own, it's gotten too hot. But if you put oil in a pan and you add food to it, that'll help to bring the temperature down. A saute over like a low, medium heat, you're not really going to damage the quality of the oil at those temperatures. Those tend to be, I guess it depends on the size of your flame too. But if, I'm going to have to think a little bit more about how to answer that question. It's a really good one. Yeah.
That's it for now. Thank you.
Okay. So jumping back to our recipes here, what are we doing? We got to cook some lentil soup. So we've got the lentils in. They've been cooking. They smell good. They're starting to soften up a bit. Let's add a couple other things to this pot. So I've got my little mise en place here. Everything is ready, put into place. And again, this is a really simple one. I've got some tomato paste. If anybody took the Preserving the Bounty of Summer class with me a few weeks ago, I froze that tomato paste and we're going to use it today. If you missed that class, you can find it online, but you can also just buy tomato paste. That's fine too. So we're going to add in our homemade tomato paste. And Alita, if you'd like to share the website on where to find that class, that would be great too, just in case anybody wants to review it. All right, I'm going to slide this back because I got to get my garlic ready. So garlic is really another, we think about Italy, we think about garlic. They just are inseparable in my mind. And I really think, it's true. Italian people tend to eat a lot of pasta and a lot of pizza, and it's really, it's not I don't think it's a stereotype. I think it's quite true. I was in Italy recently and so many of our meals were pasta and pizza, and we were walking a lot, 8 to 10 miles a day. So we kind of balanced all of that out. But I also think that people overlook all of the other things that are encompassed in Italian cuisine. I think it's garlic is a huge, it's like in every dish there's garlic. So if you're not a garlic lover, maybe Italy's not your cuisine of choice, but it's got really wonderful health properties, especially once it's kind of chopped up. It's got these sulfur compounds that kind of bloom, and those help to support the immune system, potentially help to reduce blood pressure. They might even help with cholesterol levels. Oh, it's a good thing to just kind of add in. Any other questions going on in our chat?
So yeah, there's Donna says that she ate pasta every day when she was in Italy, and she walked a lot too. John says garlic keeps away the evil spirits.
It's Halloween pretty soon. Thank you, John.
Donata says they also sit and eat and talk and enjoy their meals. So they're really having a lot of fun.
I think that's a big part of it too. It's so much of a lifestyle, that convivial kind of spirit. It's really nice. So a couple other spices going in here, some ground turmeric. I've got some ground ginger. The ginger is great when you're cooking any kind of beans or lentils. It does help to kind of assuage the digestive system. And we're gonna add some red pepper flakes. I know this says almond butter, but I just reused the container to store our homemade red pepper flakes from the garden. So if anyone's growing red peppers, it's a great thing to just air dry, split them open, wear some gloves or something, split them open, put them on a cooling rack, let them dry for a few weeks, and then pulse them in a food processor or grinder a little bit. Then you've got your red pepper flakes, and it'll last you a long time because we don't usually use that much when we make red pepper flakes. Of course, store-bought red pepper flakes are great too. So there's lots of options for you. So we're gonna add that in. Some nice spices. Smells really good already. And we're gonna add some pasta to this. Now I'm gonna use these little tiny shells. So they are about that big. But you can use, you know, if you have a different pasta shape that you like, you can throw some of that in there. You can use gluten-free pasta if you wanna make this a gluten-free dish. So there's lots of options for you. Brief note on the ginger. It also is great for inflammation. It's anti-inflammatory. It has antioxidants. The digestive properties, I talked about that. And ginger and balancing blood sugar. There's an interesting connection there. So try it out. See how it is for you. Turmeric, of course, many of us know by now. It's one of these amazing super spices. It's curcumin, that's the main active ingredient in there. And that, of course, has great anti-inflammatory properties. It is poorly absorbed, so I'm gonna add some black pepper. So I usually take the black pepper grinder and grind over the pot, but I noticed that the steam kind of clogs it up. So I'm gonna grind it onto my cutting board. That'll also help me see exactly how much I'm using. And then I can use my knife to kind of scrape it up and put it in. Okay, let's add our pasta. Let that cook. And then in Sicily, there's a wonderful, wonderful cheese, and I don't think I'm gonna say it correctly. I think it's caciocavallo or caciocavallo. I'm not sure how to say it. I'm still working on my Italian, so bear with me. But the closest thing that we have is extra sharp provolone. So, because we can't get our hands on caciocavallo, this is our extra sharp provolone cheese that we're gonna use instead. So I'm gonna this is in the plastic. This is how I like to open it up. I just cut right through the plastic, through everything, and then pop that out. Does anyone know the cheese that I'm talking about or wanna correct my pronunciation?
So I guess Donata does, because she says the second way you pronounced it was right.
Caciocavallo. Okay, great. Thank you, Donata. So this is the caciocavallo or the provolone. I'm just going to take off oh, look, it peels right off. There you go. You don't even need your knife. Peel off the little label there because we don't need that. And then you can just cut this into little cubes and kind of cook it in with everything else. And again, this is just one of those soups that's really, really simple. If you wanted to add vegetables to it, you absolutely could add handfuls of spinach at the end. You could add some carrots or celery or anything in the beginning if you want with the lentils. What else would be good in this? Zucchini would be good. I don't know if I'd go the eggplant route with this one, but I think, yeah, I would kind of stick to like zucchini, carrot, celery, maybe a parsnip would be okay in there, or some celery roots if you've ever played around with that. So there's lots of, I'm just showing you the most basic version, and then you can kind of decide and take it from there. Does anyone want to share what you might put in your soup? If anyone wants to put it in the chat, feel free. All right, any questions?
There were a comment from Anne-Marie who says that the acorn squash seeds are really great roasted.
Oh, yum.
And Terry states that her Sicilian mother used a product called GEM, G-E-M, which is a mixture of olive oil and veggie oil for frying cutlets and eggplants and all sorts of things.
Oh, that's great, Terry. I never heard of that. Interesting. Thank you.
Donata says carrots and celery.
Would be good, right? Yeah.
And Josephine says escarole.
Oh, I like that. Escarole. I always forget about escarole, and it's a great green. So I pulled the pumpkin out. I'm going to drizzle some of the vinegar, this is that sour part, over the pumpkin while it's still hot. So it has like a little moment with that vinegar to kind of soak it up. So that's got your sweet with the honey, you got your sour. And then I like to add freshly chopped mint. So I'm just going to pick some of the mint off of the stems. And this just lends for a really nice kind of sweet, sour, minty flavor combination. You could have this on its own, which is sort of the traditional way of having it. Or you could do a little fusion, which is what I like to do at home. I actually like to serve this over, I take a little bit of Greek yogurt and I put in a little pinch of lemon zest and a little pinch of salt and a little squiggle of olive oil just to kind of season the yogurt. And I serve this over the Greek yogurt. It's so good. It's so good. Sometimes I put some toasted pumpkin seeds on top for some crunch. You could do some pomegranate seeds on top for a little color. So there's some fun ways to kind of play around with serving this, but we're just going to do it the traditional Sicilian way today, which is, as far as I know, it's the traditional Sicilian way. Gosh, maybe my mother-in-law's not taught me the right way, but here I am thinking this is the way to go. So we've got our mint, we can chop that up. And then finally, we're going to finish off by making our pistachio pesto. So you can make pesto with almost any nut. It works really well with cashews and walnuts. And I wouldn't make it with peanuts. That's the only one that I would kind of like maybe not make pesto with, just because it would have such a strong peanut taste. Peanut tends to overpower things. So I try to, if I want a peanut flavor, I have to be sure of it. Questions or comments?
Some additional things for the soup: broccoli, carrots or spinach, Jerusalem artichokes.
Oh, wonderful. That's a good idea.
And
I was forget about those too.
Yeah, and as a topping, hemp hearts.
Hemp hearts. So nice. That's a great way to add some protein too.
So there was a question from Joan. She wants to know, if you don't use the pasta in the lentil dish, what else do you recommend? Would you still put in the same amount of water?
Great question. So you could leave the pasta out, but you would put in less water, maybe about a cup and a half. Maybe start with a cup and a half less water and then see how you do with that. No, you don't have to put anything else in instead. You can just have it as like a very super simple lentil soup. That's fine. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
then Anna also wants to know, can we skip the pasta and add vegetables? Yes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes. That's why I was asking everybody if they had any veggies they would add or want to, be a part of this dish. Yeah. Yeah, I'm giving you the basic recipe, very basic one, and then please build on it. This can be the foundation, and then from there you can kind of grow your own, lentil soup varieties. Oh, fennel would be good in there too. Didn't think about that one for all my fennel lovers. Okay, I'm gonna pull this forward so you can all see it. And let's make this, this pesto quickly. It's very, very simple. So these are the pistachios that I bought. They're lightly salted and shelled. So because they're lightly salted, I'm not gonna add any salt to this dish. I wanna show you, this is basil in the bag. They sell it just like this. There must be a better way to kind of, I don't know if anybody knows in this group how to like grow it back. I certainly don't, but I do like how fresh it is when it comes like this, because it has a super nice fresh taste. But I don't necessarily think you can grow it back from, after you've picked it. Has anyone had any success with that? I never have. I kind of just pick it and then I take all the soil and put it out in the woods. or you know, wherever there's dirt near me, I'll just add it to the dirt, back to the dirt. Okay, so I'm just picking all the leaves. This will go back to the dirt. And then meanwhile, we've got our pistachios. We have a little bit of Parmesan cheese. If you're dairy-free, you can make this without cheese. Just leave the cheese out. We've got some pine nuts. And I actually didn't have a lot of pine nuts, so I mixed in some hemp seeds. So I just had like a tablespoon. Look, I picked up the bag. I was like, this isn't going to be enough. So I'm using the hemp seeds as well, kind of in combination. And then I've got my garlic clove. Press that down. Get the skin off. It's going to go in there too. So that's it for pesto. We're going to drizzle in the olive oil sort of as it's going. Helps to kind of emulsify the pesto. I'm going to cut this little garlic clove in half just so it has a little more. You know what? I have a little extra mint. So you know where it's going? Into the pesto. All right. Questions, comments?
So yeah, there were a couple of comments. E says that it takes time to regrow the basil, you know, based from your question.
Okay. Yeah.
And Barbara says that she grows her own in the winter, but she does it in an aerial garden at home.
Oh, those are really cool. Yeah, they have like the lights and everything. That's pretty fun.
So Donata
all right,
says,
so maybe I just need to be more patient.
More
That's
patient
usually the answer in my life. It's usually be more patient. Okay, great. Anything else, Alita?
So yeah, Donata says you have to grow it larger and then you can take the leaves. You need a container garden for it.
Okay.
And then she said, Denise says her basil continues to grow as she picks it, except this year, I guess it didn't.
I had trouble with basil in the garden this year too. I don't know. Everything else was abundant. Sage, thyme, oregano, everything was like, woohoo. Basil was like, not feeling it this year. So, yeah, so it goes. All right, we've got everything in there. Let's add the olive oil. You don't want to overdo it with this. I have a little extra olive oil in case I need it. There it is. Okay, so it's kind of, there we go. Getting to a little bit looser. Okay, you can also add a splash of water if you want. You can add, you can certainly add some lemon juice. You can add some lemon zest. There it is. Okay, so I'm looking for it to just kind of like, yeah, okay, so I like my pesto. This is a personal taste thing. I like my pesto a little bit on the like textured side. So this is what mine looks like. But some people like it really, really smooth, so that you can, you know, like kind of let it keep going for a little bit longer if you like yours really smooth. So that's up to you. I think I saw another question come up.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we answered this one, but if you add veggies instead of the pasta to the lentil soup, do you use the same amount of water? Okay,
so that's a good question. So the reason the water changes when you're making this with pasta is because pasta absorbs a lot of water, whereas vegetables tend to release a lot of water. Zucchini is very watery, broccoli is very watery, peppers, lots of water. So it kind of depends. If you're putting like a potato or a root vegetable, something that's like hard and dense and not so watery, you don't really have to change the water levels, because you might actually have to take out water because the vegetables are going to be adding water to it. So I would say, let's just make this clear for everybody. We're using 1 cup of green lentils. So I would start, if you're going to do veggies instead, start with maybe 2.5, 3 cups of water, 3 at most. Then add your vegetables and see, you can always add more water in later. So that's kind of, that's kind of what I would suggest. To start with 2.5 cups, keep an eye on it. Depending on what vegetable you're adding, you may need to add another half cup, another full cup, depending. Okay?
All right. And then Muriel says that she puts basil stems in water, you know, like rooting them, and you know, and sometimes that works. And then she planted it. And then she planted it in soil for a new kitchen plant.
Oh, that's so nice. Wow, you guys are very patient and kind with your basil. I will do better. I will do better. All right, I'm inspired to do better. So I am just pulling this out, and you can see like this is really nice, kind of thick green pistachio pesto. It's, oh my gosh, it smells so good. Oh, amazing. So why pistachios? Why are we focusing on pistachios today? Pistachios are native to Western Asia and the Middle East. They've been eaten for over 8,000 years, as far as we know. They're very energy dense. They contain lots of protein, surprising amount of protein, actually. When I looked at the nutrition facts on the pistachios, I have them here. For a quarter cup, 6 grams of protein. So it's a good amount of protein. There's a lot of fiber in there too. Let's look at the facts since I have them here. 3 grams for a quarter cup. So that's quite good as well. Other highlights of pistachios. Oh, they may promote heart health by reducing the LDL cholesterol and supporting the HDL cholesterol. So there's some interesting like diabetes and heart health properties to pistachios. I think they're delicious. Yeah, they're a nice thing to enjoy. They're often very, very salty though. That's why I like to buy these ones, because they're lightly salted. And if you wanted to remove some of the salt altogether, and you could do this in your pesto making, grab a little, sieve or colander, something like this, put your salted nuts in them and rinse them. Give them a good rinse, and that'll help you get off some of the, extra salt that you may not be wanting necessarily in your dish. And then you can put them in the pesto. You don't have to dry them. They'll be a little damp. That's okay. So pine nuts, on the other hand, they're from the cones of pine trees. That's why they're called pine nuts. And they have this really distinctive flavor and this kind of buttery texture. That's due to the high oil content, particularly high in vitamins E and K. So the pine nuts they're not as protein rich, but they do give it kind of like that buttery texture. So they're kind of a nice thing to include. Questions or comments? Our time is almost up.
Yes, there is a few. So would sweet potato work in the soup?
I think sweet potato would be good. Yeah. I think sweet potato would be very good, actually.
So
you just would have to keep the same amount of water if you're doing sweet potato.
Yeah. So Donata says that basil is Italian aromatherapy. He wants to know if the pistachio commonly used in pestos, or well, you mentioned pine nuts are usually what are.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I'm just flipping over the rest of our pumpkins before putting them back in. So commonly, the most common in pesto is actually the pine nut. The pine nuts are very, very expensive. So I just like to, and the traditional Sicilian is with the pistachios. That's it.
And there's a comment from Beverly. She says she planted basil with a tomato in a container and putting it under an overhead shelter during all rainy days and back in the sun on dry days. She said it was a daily labor, but worth it this rainy year.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's pretty cool. So I just want to show you, when you add the pasta, this becomes a sort of dry pasta dish, right? It's like, this is more now like a pasta dish than a soup. So you're going to add the cheese on top, let that melt in. If you wanted this to be a bit more liquid, of course, you could add liquid to it and just have it more as a soup. So the option is there. And then the pistachio pesto, I could just eat this with a spoon, but what can you do with this? You could add this to simply roasted vegetables. They're hot out of the oven. Add a little pesto to them. It gives them a really nice flavor. Or if you're just like doing a simply steamed broccoli or something like that, add a little pesto to it. Gives it something special. So I like to use pesto in that way, mostly to kind of dress up vegetables. I will also stir it into a Greek yogurt for a savory dip. I've also used it on, if I'm making a sandwich or a wrap to kind of give it some flavor. I've used it on eggs. It's delicious on eggs. What else? How else do you like to use pesto? Anyone want to share some thoughts on how you might use your pistachio pesto? And then we'll close our class.
Yeah, Josephine says on top of fish.
Oh, great idea. Yes, on top of fish. Great.
On bread. Barbara says on bread.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. That's it.
And,
everybody.
thanks for the tip on
Yeah.
the rinsing of the nuts. Denise
Oh,
says she
yeah,
never
you're
thought
so
of that.
welcome.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know, because they're dry and we think, oh, they're supposed to stay dry. But if they're salted or lightly salted, give them a rinse. It'll help to get some of that off. Yeah. Great, Denise.
And
Thank
that's
you,
it.
everybody. So, buona serata. I hope you have a wonderful evening. That's the end of this Rustic Sicilian feast. I hope you try some of these recipes. Let me know how they come out. If you're having any issues or questions, you can always email me and I'm happy to guide you a little bit further. Then we have another class coming up on Thursday, which is all about apples. So it's full on apple season out there. I hope you'll join me for that one. Can't remember what we're making. I think we're making an apple hazelnut cake, which is going to be delicious, and a couple other appley, delicious, savory things too. So I hope to see you all again. Thank you, Alita, for moderating, and have a great evening.
Anytime. Thank you.